Psychology is the study of all aspects of behavior and mental process. It includes topics such as how the brain works and how our memory is organized, how people interact in a group, and how children learn about the world. Psychology is a very new science. It includes many subfields of studies such areas as human development, sport, health, social behavior, and cognitive process. So let's take a look at the major goal of psychology, what psychology is trying to accomplish, and how psychology is used to solve the real-world problems. There are 4 major ways that we are going to understand and gain information about this particular subject. One of the first goals of psychology is simply to describe behavior. You are describing what is going on. In this stage, we are not trying to explain something, we are trying to describe something. Through describing the behavior of humans or other animals, we are able to understand it and gain a better perspective on what is considered normal and abnormal. For example, I saw a white bird is flying. So this is what I saw. We are not trying to explain why the bird is flying. I just simply describe how the bird looks like and telling you what happens. So the next step is to explain, because if we just describe things, it doesn't help us to better understand on what's going on. So the next stage is trying to explain why things happen. For example, we can say that the bird is flying, maybe it's because it's a sunny day. We're coming up with this possible explanation. So we're trying to explain why this thing happened. Psychologists are interested in explaining behavior in addition to merely describing it. Why do people do this? What factors contribute the development, personality, social behavior, and mental health problems? The third step is going to be prediction, which we can get more information about our research. By doing that, we predict when it will happen again. So for previous example, if we know that the white bird will fly when it's sunny day, then I can predict that if tomorrow is also a sunny day, then the bird will appear tomorrow, which is much closer to our real hypothesis. So once we understand more about what happens and why it happens, we can use that information to make a prediction about when, why, and how it might happen again in the future. So we are getting closer to science, which leads us to the next step, control. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, psychology tries to change, influence, or control behavior to make constructive and lasting changes in people's life. In our previous example, we might say that if it's a cloudy day but we got food for them, then the white bird will still appear for the food. For this stage, we are trying to know that if we can change this situation or not. Our next concept is going to be the 7 perspective. The first perspective is going to be psychodynamic perspective. The picture right here is an iceberg and it only shows 10% value above the water. Other 90% are just underwater in the dark, deep recesses of the sea. And that's your mind. We only able to see 10% of your mind and other 90% is hidden. So we are going to focus on what's going on in the mind of an individual and unconscious mind, which stemming from our early childhood experiences. For example, a childhood event that caused fear of staying in an open space could be linked to a trauma in childhood that now causes this behavior. Next, we are going to look at the behavioral perspective. So it's a study focused on behavior. Whatever is going on in a person's environment will influence their behavior. For example, each time a child does a desirable behavior such as clean their room or wash their own dishes, parents can give them a reward that the child will continue to exhibit the desired behavior because he or she wants to earn that reward until eventually the behavior becomes a habit. Next is going to be humanistic perspective. It is a concept such as a positive growth, which being the best you can and more focus on the ways that human beings are driven to grow, change, and develop their personal potential. For example, a person feels like his or her life is plain or boring. A humanistic perspective will encourage this person to do something fun, such as a hobby, a friendship, or a relationship, whatever it takes for this person to feel fully self-actualized. Next is going to be cognitive perspective. It's more about how people think, how people remember, and how people store and use information. Everyday example of cognitive can be how we learn new things from school and how we solve a math problem. It can also relate to a decision making. We are actually using this perspective every day. Next is going to be sociocultural perspective. For this perspective, we can learn more about how culture influences our thinking and behavior. Then I'm going to show you guys a video of how Japanese culture influences their kids to be independent. So her parents said she commutes to school by train every day alone, especially Japan has a very crazy and complicated transportation system. If she gets lost or catch the wrong train, she has to figure it out on her own. This is completely different here. And that's probably because the culture is different, and which causes the differences between our behavior and education. And next is going to be biopsychological perspective, which is all about biological basis of behavior and mental process, which means we're more focused on hormones, brain chemicals, basically about everything that related to the biology. For example, we always comfort eat when we are sad, or our body craves for food when we're feeling depressed, and when we are eating, it always makes us feel better, and this food are chemicals. So what we are looking at is how those hormones and chemicals impact our function like eating and emotion. Our last perspective is going to be evolutionary perspective. The root word for the evolutionary is going to be evolution, so which we are going to focus on adaptation here, how human behavior is required for survival, have adapted in the face of environmental pressures and evolution. For example, we run away from something that's scary to live, like tigers. So if the first caveman didn't run away from the tiger to survive, then we wouldn't know to be scared because that person died. So there are so many things that our behavior are adapted to. Our last concept is going to be how to work in psychology. While we know that what the psychology is, then we must wondering what can we do with the psychology degree. And if you choose to study psychology at school, there are many different areas which you can choose to focus on. This include health, clinical, educational, research and teaching, occupational counseling, neuron, sport, and exercise. So let's take a look at the psychology career in healthcare and therapy.
Sometimes I would just lose it. I'd get irritable for no reason and lash out at those I love, with put-me-downs and sarcastic comments. It hurt that I would say those things to people I love, but I was hurting inside too. A friend recommended embodied living to me. She said it had changed her life, so I booked a free appointment. We did more than just talk, and I suddenly understood everything. I began to realise why I am like I am. I then things started changing. I developed choices and felt in control.
The short video helped us to understand why psychotherapy is so important in our lives and help us to become more of who we can be. There are 3 different kinds of professionals working with this problem. So our first one is going to be the psychiatrist, who can help patients overcome psychological issues, including emotional and relationship issues, stress, and even addiction. They can working with individuals, couples, groups, and families. Psychiatrists are the only one who train as a medical doctor, so they are the only one who can prescribe medicine in the field of psychology, and they spend much of their time with patients on medication management as a course of treatment. Different from psychiatrists, psychologists are all licensed professionals. This means that they have a certain degree of training. Basically, they focus more on psychotherapy and treating emotional and mental suffering in patients with behavioral intervention. In contrast, social workers are not doctoral level professionals, but rather have earned a master's degree in social work, are someone who works with people who are going through difficult periods in their life.